The 4 disciplines of execution give leaders the ability to execute their most important goals in the face of multiple competing priorities and distractions. The disciplines are powerful and simple. They are not, however, simplistic. They require us to work very differently than we normally do. Discipline 1 is focus on the wildly important. It means you focus on less in order to accomplish more. You start by picking one wildly important goal or WIG, something you want to significantly improve, and you give it a special treatment. Discipline 2 is act on the lead measures. Lead measures track the critical activities that drive or lead to WIG success. Not only are lead measures predictive of goal success, they're influenceable by the team. Your team can do something about them. As leaders, we tend to focus on lag measures, the ones that tell us whether or not we have achieved the goal, not the lead measures, the ones that predict if we will. Discipline 3 is keep a compelling scoreboard. People play differently when they're keeping score. To make a winnable game, your team constructs a player's scoreboard and tracks their progress towards achieving the goal. Discipline 4 is create a cadence of accountability. It requires a rhythm of regular and frequent team meetings that track your team's progress against your WIG. Now, make no mistake, this is your most important execution tool as a leader. In these brief daily or weekly meetings, team members make commitments and hold each other accountable to move the score. The best way to understand the 4 disciplines is to see them in action. I got to know Jim Dixon, the general manager of store 334, which had the worst financial performance of 250 stores in his division of a major grocery chain. People didn't want to shop there, and they didn't want to work there either. Every day Jim came to work, he would do what he called the head slap over the same old problems. Carts scattered in the parking lot, shelves not properly stocked, and a messy store. Not only had he hired people to do those things, he had hired people to hire people to do those things. Nothing in that store happened until Jim told somebody to do it. The really sad part was Jim considered himself a good grocer, and he was viewed as a high potential manager when they'd hired him as a GM a year earlier. When we met him, he'd been working 16 days straight, hadn't taken a vacation in over a year. He was pretty much carrying the store on his back. The vice president of human resources confided in us, Jim's either gonna quit or we may have to let him go. Now, with all he had to do, you can imagine that Jim was delighted to be going to a training. But Jim knew his team needed an execution process and he was willing to give it a try. In the session, they started by getting really clear on the wildly important goal.
All right, so we're gonna grow year over year income 10%.
One goal, that's better than the 9 we're supposed to be working on.
After a lot of discussion, they decided the thing that was most predictive and influenceable was store conditions. Measuring a lead measure like store conditions turned out, as it usually does, to be a little tricky. How do you measure something like conditions in a grocery store with thousands of products? Well, they figured it out. Each department came up with the top 5 most important things to measure for that department, and they decided to score themselves daily on a 1 to 10 scale. They had a plan. Jim, the assistant manager, and the department heads would assess store conditions and update the scoreboards daily. The bet was that as store conditions improved, so would year-over-year operating income. They posted the scoreboards, and that night, the employees tore them down. So everybody took a step back, took time to communicate, and after the first of the year, they tried again. They engaged the team, they put the scoreboards back up, and this time they stayed. But after 2 weeks, the 5 departments were only averaging a 13 out of 50 on a scale they'd created themselves.
Yolanda!
The whirlwind, the day-to-day pressure sucked the department heads right back to where they'd been before. Despite the scoreboards, nothing had really changed in the store.
I'm just too busy to worry about that. I've got a large catering order, and that'll take all day. And I gotta do something about inventory because I'm about to run out, and I'm understaffed. There's just no time.
Despite all the work that had been done, there was no regular weekly accounting to say, here's what I did last week, here's what I'm gonna do this week to move that score. So in a last attempt, we pleaded with Jim to meet with his team weekly and to ask each one the question.
What is the one thing, just one thing, that you could do that would have the biggest impact on the scoreboard this week?
You want me to choose?
Yeah.
I guess I could get the back room cleaned out.
Okay. And how would that help things?
Well, it's kind of cluttered. I mean, I've got a lot of extra racks and a variety of things out on the floor. If I can get the back room cleaned up and move all those things off the floor, it'll look better.
Great. Great. Just schedule some time and let me know if you need any help. Just that one thing, Yolanda. Okay. Ted, what is the one thing that you could do that would have the biggest impact on the scoreboard this week?
Was Jim micromanaging now? No. Now they were choosing. He had been micromanaging. And not because he wanted to be an overbearing or a controlling boss, but because he didn't know what else to do. Jim's team met weekly, determining what they and their departments could do every week to improve the score and reporting on the prior week's commitments. It took about 10 weeks, but Jim's team moved their average score from a 13 to a 38 on that 50-point scale. Store 334, the worst performing store out of 250 stores, went on to outproduce the rest of their zone in operating income. We were surprised at how quickly store sales responded to an improvement in store conditions. We were even more surprised in the change in morale when Jim's team started feeling like they were winning. Deep down, everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to contribute to a goal that really matters. It's so disheartening to push and push day in and day out and wonder if you're making a difference. Every leader has to execute, and every team needs to know if they're winning. That's why these disciplines are so essential to a leader's success.